Women have to express aggression somehow unless you're willing to say that they're not aggressive. They tend not to do it physically, not to the degree men do, so they use other channels. And what other channels are there other than physical aggression if you're going to be aggressive? Well, you go after people verbally. You go after them with innuendo and gossip and reputation destruction.
Guys, not all women do this, okay? But the ones who do are dangerous because it's not always done necessarily out of malice. Sometimes it's instinct. Sometimes it's unhealed trauma. But if you don't know the game, you're going to get played every single time.
This is Drew, and I'd like to welcome you back to another episode of Real Talk Today. Female nature, basically, is what I want to talk about today. It was understood hundreds of years ago, but it was never really talked about, especially in the mainstream. It's pretty much kept behind closed doors, so to speak, until now. So the purpose of this video is basically stop hating women. Just try to understand them. And by understanding them, will give you the clarity on why they tend to act the way that they do. Never love a woman more than she loves you. Chasing, begging, seducing, convincing a woman is a quick road to nowhere. Let's talk about it.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear that the thoughts build up until I can't.
Some women don't break your heart. They train you to break it yourself. And the worst part, you won't even know it's happening until it's too late. You think you're in love, but you're actually being controlled, manipulated, played.
Nietzsche did not see love as a peaceful union. He saw it as a battlefield. Two opposing instincts clashing beneath the illusion of romance.
She just needs to make you feel bad. I'll paint a picture for you. Say you can't make it to dinner. Work dragged for a while, you're tired, you just want one evening to yourself. She goes quiet and then hits you with, "It's okay, I just thought you'd make time for me if I really mattered." Boom, right there in the chest. Now you're texting back, apologizing, scrambling to rearrange your schedule, not because you want to, but because she's made you feel like saying no equals you not loving her enough.
Men and women, in his view, were not naturally aligned, but inherently.
It's emotional blackmail, dressed up as vulnerability. And once it works once, it will never stop.
They desired each other, yes, but for entirely different reasons. And that difference created conflict disguised as connection.
She'll start using guilt to keep you from friends, get you to spend money you didn't plan to, make you feel responsible for her moods, and slowly rewire you to believe that putting yourself first is actually selfish. It doesn't actually come across as manipulation. It comes across as love that's disappointed. And that's what makes it so dangerous.
Yeah. But a lot of us guys, I think we get in a situation where we started looking at women, we don't understand we're being manipulated. We're looking at, oh, she loves us, oh, that's cute. As we're going to find out as the video goes, these particular traits, these women they have learned over time is, just so they can survive. If you really think about it, that's pretty much how we love. We pretty much love our woman pretty much unconditionally. If she lose her job, I don't throw a woman out of divorce because she's not working, as opposed to, if it's the other way around, most women are not even going to want to go 2 months paying all the bills, even if you're down sick, without complaining. We just love differently. But that's not a fault. That's just how they're built. But let's continue.
Number 2, weaponizing sex. Let's be honest, sex is powerful, but in the wrong hands, it becomes a weapon. And some women use it to train you like a little puppy. Sit, stay, roll over. And maybe you'll get a little affection if you behave well enough. This type of manipulation is subtle at first. In the beginning, the chemistry is wild. She can't keep her hands off you, but then suddenly she starts rationing it. You argue, she goes cold. You don't do something her way, she's just not in the mood anymore. She wants something from you though, and she turns it on hard. This isn't about attraction anymore. It's about control through intimacy.
There you go.
See, let me explain, okay? At this point, she starts treating physical affection like a transaction, not a shared connection, but a currency. You're no longer having sex because you both want to. You're doing it because you think, well, if I don't, she'll get upset. Or worse, if I do, maybe she'll finally stop being distant. See how twisted that gets? She's dangling connection like bait, and you're jumping through hoops to earn something that, well, basically should be mutual. Want to break that cycle, however? Then it means you have to take sex and affection off the pedestal. Stop treating it like a prize and start asking if the emotional dynamic between you two is healthy.
You have to. That's why it goes back to what we talked about earlier, as far as making sure the woman that you pick to be in your life loves you more than you love her. Because if that's the case, she can't use sex as manipulation, because she picked you, she chose you, and if she wants to keep you, she knows she's going to at least have to keep something like that, which is basic, on the table to be able to keep the man that she's chosen, that she's picked, to stay around. If you got to beg her, seduce her, convince her to be with you, and she finally starts thinking, well, I really don't like, he's really not my type, but he wore me down, or it's a situation where I've been through all the guys that I can get, now I'll just settle for you. Of course, you're going to end up with a sexless relationship, or you, like this lady said, it's going to be doled out to you like a puppet. If you do this, I'll do that. And I promise you, no one wants lazy starfish sex that is just going through the motions.
What disturbed him most was the dishonesty of it all. Society dressed up this war in poetry and flowers, calling it romance. But beneath that softness, Nietzsche saw calculation. Have you ever felt like no one tells the truth about women anymore? That every conversation is either blind worship or bitter resentment, never clarity, never honesty. Society idealizes women as pure, nurturing, and morally superior. But what if this image is a carefully crafted illusion?
Have no friend, and trust no woman.
Now, basically, what he's talking about is what you seeing as far as these women, especially nowadays with all the makeup, the BBLs, the lace fronts and all this, right? That we're seeing right now is all an illusion and it's all fake. But how can you honestly tell yourself you can trust somebody that everything about them is artificial, nothing's really real? Of course, if you go for the illusion itself, you're not going to be thinking about what's coming out of that person's mouth or their actions, and you're going to tend to excuse a lot of things that probably shouldn't have got excused.
And what if one of history's most controversial philosophers saw through it over a century ago? Friedrich Nietzsche was not afraid to say what others wouldn't. He didn't hate women, but he didn't romanticize them either. While most thinkers of his time either dismissed or pedestalized women, Nietzsche went deeper. He asked, what lies beneath the surface? Not what men want women to be, but what they really are beneath the social masks, beneath the ideals, beneath the roles they've been given. He saw something uncomfortable, something few dare to confront even today. Not because it's offensive, but because it's true that the relationship between men and women was not built on equality, nor love in the idealized sense, but on instinct, power, and survival.
Gaslighting is psychological warfare. It's when someone makes you doubt what you saw, what you heard, and what you felt. And women who use this tactic, they don't actually come out swinging, no. They come in soft, smiling, calm, calculated. Let's say you catch her texting her ex and you bring it up. What does she say? Oh, wow, so now I can't even have friends. You're so insecure, it's exhausting. Boom, you just got flipped. Now you're the problem. But it doesn't stop there. Every time you bring up some kind of boundary, a concern, or a red flag, she'll flip it, dismiss it, and make you feel dramatic and overly sensitive. And when a woman uses this tactic repeatedly, she slowly becomes the one source of truth in the relationship. And that's not love.
These women know that pretty much the world is pretty much run through men. But what we forget is it's not just about who's in charge, so he's actually running, it's who's pulling the strings behind the scenes. And a lot of time it is the women.
The more you look around today, the more his vision seems eerily accurate. This isn't a script about blame. It's not about glorifying men or criticizing women. It's about facing a deeper truth, one that reveals the hidden forces behind gender, attraction, and control. Because once you understand how Nietzsche saw women, you may never look at love, power, or identity the same way again. Let's break it down. Nietzsche believed that men do not truly love women. They love an idea of women, a projection, a carefully constructed illusion that makes them feel safe, inspired, even superior. He called this romantic idealization a dangerous lie, one that says women are inherently pure, innocent, delicate, and morally elevated. Instead of facing that complexity, men reduced women to symbols of virtue, of beauty, of emotional salvation. And in doing so, they stripped women of their agency and turned them into characters in their own emotional dramas. Nietzsche found this not only dishonest, but cowardly. He argued that men lie to themselves because they cannot bear the full truth of what women are: instinctive, strategic, and driven by their own form of power.
Some women don't ask questions to get answers. They ask to test your loyalty to their ego. Now, this is the manipulation most men don't even see coming because it doesn't look aggressive. It looks playful and innocent and even cute, right? But make no mistake, when a woman starts testing you instead of communicating with you, she's not looking for love. She's looking for control.
The fun thing about being a feminine woman is that we get to have this fun sort of manipulation tactics. So what does that look like? Well, as I always say on here, you don't want to go to men with solutions. You want to present them with problems instead because they are Mr. Fix-It by nature.
As a woman, as long as you have male contacts in your phone, you should never be broke. And if you can't ask any of the male contacts that text you, hey, good morning, what you doing, for money? Yes, it is time. Block, 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 block.
Now, these women just touched on what we were just talking about as far as being able to manipulate the situation. First woman said, don't bring him solution, bring him problem. Hey, I'm broke. I need some money. My bills are not paid. My phone get ready to cut off. That's usually the first one they hit you with is, can you pay my phone bill? Because they know a lot of times they can't just come and ask you for it, but they're like, man, I would love to be able to talk to you on a regular basis, but my phone is getting ready to get cut off tomorrow. And then we as men, being problem solvers, like the woman said, next thing you know, we done stepped up and that's when it started. Now we done paid a couple $100 for a phone bill and it only just continues from there.
Not better or worse than men, but different, mysterious, not because they're incomprehensible, but because men choose not to understand.
Maybe we should get to know each other. I'll take your number and maybe we can meet up on another time.
I don't really give out my number though, that's the thing.
So you're not interested?
No, sorry.
All right, no problem. Have a good one.
All right, you too. I just realized my Lyft ride, they just canceled.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that.
Would you?
Show intentions.
You could just start helping me out with a few things. We could really just each other.
What do you mean though? Get
my nails done, you know what I'm saying? And I just got a few little bills. Ain't nothing.
She ain't even cute enough for all that. There you go. Now, this last little piece of clip you saw was from my boy London over at London's Way. But when you deal with them, we tend to call them gold diggers now. But it's basically the same manipulative type of behavior that was understood hundreds, maybe thousands of years ago. And, it just was never really talked about because men wanted to kind of act like that women loved us and dealt with us on the same level and at the same manner that we deal with them. But that love is just not the same. For the most part, most women's love is always going to be based on what you can give them or how you make them feel. Now, a lot of guys, they'll get in, short term and they may get the box, cheap, but usually they'll have babies by these guys. And then once they get a few kids with a few different guys, then they want to try to get somebody that's going to let them sit down after that. But as you see how London handle women that come at him like that, put their hand out right off the bat, it's basically a survival tactic. This woman probably doesn't have the money. You can see she's not very attractive, and she probably got her best clothes on, hoping she was going to, entice somebody to come out there and get some free money. But like I said, don't hate it. It's just a survival tactic and deal with it accordingly.
They would rather protect their fantasy than confront reality. This mask of idealization, Nietzsche believed, was not a sign of love, but of fear. Fear of emotional independence. Fear of sexual autonomy. Fear of a woman who doesn't need to be saved. So men dressed their fear up as adoration, called it romance, and fooled even themselves. But when reality breaks through, when the ideal cracks and the real woman emerges, men often feel betrayed. Not because she changed, but because the illusion they created couldn't hold. And Nietzsche, always devoted to truth over comfort, saw this as one of society's deepest lies, that to love women, men must first blind themselves to who women really are. Nietzsche never saw women as weak. He saw them as masters of a different kind of strength, one that doesn't shout, but whispers. While men often display their power in obvious ways, through status, dominance, or aggression, Nietzsche believed that women had developed a more refined form of control.
I don't know if you starting to get it yet, but I'm hoping that you understand as we go along, these women are not these soft, dainty creatures that, we led to believe, Now, women of old, a lot of them were a lot quieter, they're just getting loud with it now. But what women don't understand is the louder they've gotten less of what they think they deserve or less of what they wanted.
Let's talk about the classic one-liner. Do whatever you want, right? Now you could take that at face value, but if you do, she'll label you emotionally clueless, because that phrase is never permission, it's actually a trap. You go out with your boys like you originally planned. Now she's mad, passive-aggressive, cold. You failed the test. You stay home and she's fine again, warm, happy, you passed. But ask yourself this question, passed what exactly? You weren't rewarded for being thoughtful, you were rewarded for being obedient.
Not less powerful, just less visible. He saw this as a form of evolutionary intelligence. For most of history, women were denied access to formal power. They couldn't rule countries or lead armies. So instead, they adapted. They learned to influence from the shadows, through charm, through seduction, through emotional precision. And while men built their kingdoms with swords and speeches, women shaped the men who built those kingdoms. Nietzsche noticed how women could guide decisions without giving commands, win loyalty without force, and secure protection without asking. Their power was relational, psychological, and built on deep awareness of human nature.
Isolating you from your power. When a woman wants to control you, the first thing she does is separate you from everything that makes you strong. This tactic doesn't come with warning signs. It starts soft, subtle, wrapped in concern or care. She doesn't demand that you stop spending time with your boys. She just says, well, I don't like how you act when you're around them, right? She doesn't forbid you from chasing your goals. She just says, well, you're always too busy, right? I wish I felt more important. And slowly, piece by piece, she cuts you off from your power sources.
That's why one of the things we just talked about in the beginning of this video, put yourself first. Because I'm gonna tell you, any woman that you put her first, sooner or later she's gonna start losing respect for you. And usually it starts out, she start getting a little bit resentful, then she start tapering off with the sex. Now you get resentful because now you feel like, darn, I committed to you and nobody else, but now you don't want to give me any. So, just like this lady said, she'll tell you, now go ahead and do what you want to do. Go ahead and step out. You get through somebody else. If that's what you want. It don't matter to me. And then as soon as you do it, I got you. Next thing you know, you're sitting up in divorce court, paying alimony, child support, and everything that you came across your whole life is being delegated to someone else that didn't work and put it there with you.
And that's how it works.
And just to be clear, that you think that's predominantly a female modus operandi?
It isn't that I think that.
Well,
it's that the clinical literature indicates that.
They understood what moved men: desire, ego, pride, and they learned how to shape those forces without confrontation. not out of malice, but survival. Because while this kind of power is harder to see, it's also harder to resist. That women had an instinct for strategy, a way of making others act without realizing they were being led.
This is one of the main ways women pretty much get what they want. They act like they're crying, their feelings hurt, and then our protective nature, basically kicks in, and next thing you know, we've given up our manhood, so to speak, and it's all about her and nothing about us. Let's go.
And in this sense, he saw them not as victims of history, but as quiet tacticians within it. This wasn't flattery. It was a challenge to the naive assumptions of his time. Society painted women as passive and dependent. Nietzsche saw them as calculating, intuitive, and fiercely aware of their influence.
The brutal truth is, the more you abandon yourself to please her, the less attractive you become to her.
Go.
He wasn't blaming them for this. He was simply stating what few dared to say out loud, that in the realm of human relationships, the most powerful person is often the one who never has to raise their voice.
Look at me. The loudest one in the room is the weakest one in the room. I told you that.
Nietzsche believed that human beings are not driven by truth. They are driven by appearance. And in women, he saw this instinct elevated to an art form.
Man trying to use me for my money, right?
It is. My daddy.
Okay, well your daddy taught you wrong then.
Always take a man's money.
Yeah.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
Yeah.
Well, my dad always told me to always take a woman's mouth then. So what's up?
You're so disrespectful. You're so disrespectful.
How disrespectful? But you asking me for money though, right?
You're so disrespectful.
But you're asking me for money.
Why would you even say that to me? Does it look like I would do that?
But you're asking me for money, right?
That has nothing.
I'm asking you a question.
I'm not a prostitute.
Okay, I'm not an ATM.
Yeah.
That right there is a classic form of manipulation. We just saw this woman right here do. My daddy told me, we just a female and get his money. But, it's not offensive for her to, try to manipulate you out of whatever she wants. But soon as you start asking for something, oh my God, now you done disrespected me. Man, please don't fall for this stupidness, but let's go.
Not out of superficiality, but out of necessity. In a world where direct power was denied to them, women learned to survive through illusion, performance, and the careful crafting of perception. He didn't accuse women of being fake. In fact, he admired their ability to navigate a hostile world by mastering the surface. While men often confuse appearance with reality, Nietzsche argued that women understand the distinction instinctively. They know the mask is not the face, and yet they also know the mask matters more. To Nietzsche, the way women present themselves is not vanity, it is strategy. Their beauty, their grace, their social intelligence, these are not ornaments, they are weapons. In a society that reduces their value to how they are seen, women learn early that control over perception is control over outcome. Have an intuitive grasp of the symbolic. They understand that people don't fall in love with reality. They fall in love with what they want reality to be.
Most guys, we definitely do not fall in love with reality. We don't fall in love. When we first meet a person, what we see is her representative, with all the makeup, all the extra additives added. We don't see that person, in the bed farting all night and, cussing and laying you out and don't want to cook and argumentative and, when she's in a bad mood going off. Those are not the people that we meet on the street. We meet those people once you live with them a while and you start getting a real taste of what you're dealing with. But I think it's high time that men understand that women do understand the illusion that they're putting out. So you guys don't go for that when they start talking, we don't get BBLs for men. We don't dress up for men. We don't do anything for men. It's all about us. If these women were doing all this stuff for themselves, they would go to bed and all this garb that they got on, they would go to bed the same way that they come out on the street, but they don't. They peel all of this illusion off when it's more real and natural.
By shaping how they are perceived, Women don't just react to the world, they shape it. This is why Nietzsche believed the question of truth is never simple when it comes to human interaction. Because in a world where perception is power, the will to appear becomes just as important, if not more, than the will to be. Women, through centuries of exclusion, refine this into a skill few recognize for what it truly is, a quiet, persistent mastery of the surface that, in this sense, love was not the end of conflict. It was its most seductive form, a negotiation of power.
Not all women do this, okay? But the ones who do are dangerous because it's not always done necessarily out of malice. Sometimes it's instinct. Sometimes it's unhealed trauma. But if you don't know the game, you're gonna get played every single time.
This video has gotten a little bit long, but I thought this particular one needed to be delved in a lot deeper than just scratching the surface. They know that they can manipulate us, basically through our loins. You've heard the old saying, best way to a man's heart is through his belly and his balls. We've all heard that, but basically it's just manipulation. Why do you think most of the men are in jail now? Surveys have been done for years. Most of them are in jail. It's something involving a woman. Either guy might have lost his job and one putting pressure on him, threatening to take his children, because she threatened to divorce me, don't get some money and that thing. He went out and robbed a bank or sold drugs or whatever, But these are just ways that women manipulate the environment around them to get what they pretty much want. Remind me of an old quote from an old movie, I think it was back in 98, 99, Players Club, when one of Ronnie's whole quotes, she said, use what you got to get what you want. And that's what they do. And with that, we're going to wrap it up, and I'll see you at the next one.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear that the thoughts build up until I can't hear, that my mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper.
Anxiety, filling up every space, no privacy.